Welcome to the Covert Narcissism podcast. I'm your host, Renee Swanson, and thank you so much for joining us today. This is another guest episode, and I'm really excited about today's guest. It's a unique story, and I'm really eager to hear it. This is Vanessa Reiser. Vanessa is a licensed clinical social worker. She specializes in narcissistic abuse and cult abuse. And her story begins pretty uniquely, but I want to first start by just welcoming you here. Vanessa, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm eager to hear what you have to say to the audience today and with narcissistic abuse. Can you kind of get us started? I understand you ran across the state of New York in a wedding dress.
Yes, so I was in a toxic relationship. It ended around the time where COVID began, which was, I know, really, really hard for a lot of people to be in the house with a narcissist or somebody who has NPD or somebody who's toxic. And I was fortunate enough to have fled that environment right around that time. And subsequently, a little while after that, I came up with this idea as a therapist, as a social worker, and somebody who's really interested in advocacy. I wanted to shine a light on what I had just endured. And I thought, what better way than to do something that I love so much, which is running. And we fashioned the wedding dress to be run worthy and then took off from Oswego, New York, which is the northern point of New York State, and ran 285 miles in 11 days and landed in Manhattan. And we did get a lot of attention with that run, thankfully, and we were able to kind of continue to open up dialogues around what psychological abuse looks like, all of the characteristics of somebody who is pathologically disordered. And I continue to work on a micro scale with all of my clients, but also continue my advocacy work with my run across New Jersey, Connecticut, and then ultimately Massachusetts just this past June. So really proud of continuing to keep the momentum going, even though I am so tired and ready to pass the baton to anybody that is crazy and stupid enough to do something like this, which is basically zero. No one is willing to take the baton from me, unfortunately, for me. So here I am every year, annually now running, but that was the whole goal, was to really kind of make some noise. So that was what we did.
And it sounds like you succeeded in that.
Hopefully, I think, we did get enough attention. It was in the New York Times and a ton of publications internationally as well. So really, I think, the point of it is do something crazy and stupid and people will ultimately pay attention to you.
Right, right. Well, you talk about COVID, and I'm glad you bring that up because one of the things when COVID hit, it was after my divorce, but not by a lot, only about a year after my divorce. And when COVID hit, one of my first immediate thoughts as the world was kind of shutting down like it did and pushing everybody into their homes, one of my immediate thoughts was, oh my gosh, thank God I'm out of the marriage I'm in, or I would have been trapped in that home. And then my second thought that followed right behind it was all those people who are now trapped in that situation.
Yeah, I was on the board for a domestic violence center, and there was an enormous upkick in calls for outreach to get help because people were now stuck in the homes with people that were particularly abusive. And then we saw ultimately, and I don't know the data on this, but it's easy to imagine tons of divorces coming out of that and still kind of washing out because of the delay in the judicial system, which is a whole other topic, trying to divorce a narcissist.
Yes, it is.
Incredibly difficult in the family court system, which is basically domestic terrorism.
Right. That's a good word for it. It is domestic terrorism. And it's hard for the courts to really end up and caught in the crossfire trying to make sense out of a situation that we're barely able to make sense out of ourselves. And we've been living it. And then we're asking people outside of that to be, on our side or hear us out. And they're trying to make sense out of just an impossible situation.
Yeah, I think, there are two things that go on with the family court. They either don't get it or they don't care. And those are both really, they end up with terrible results for the victim.
Yes, they do. And for the children and the
Definitely.
situation then. Yeah, which are victims of it too, even though they might not be direct, they're definitely gonna be indirect victims.
Yeah.
Okay. So you ran across New York and a wedding dress. How did that feel? What was that like?
That was really transformative. It was incredibly liberating. I was doing a ton of my own healing at that time, and yet I felt like there was a collective force with me that the silent victims were kind of, they were messaging me constantly like go go go, like they were sort of carrying me through it because, as you know, in the judicial system, so many of those people are dealing with civil restraints or NDAs, or they're just afraid to speak out because then there'll be this further lashing and punishment by their abuser. So there was this feeling. I never co-parented with a narcissist, and that was the beauty and the magic, coupled with my clinical expertise or my credentialing. I thought it was my obligation to do this, because I had what I felt was the closest thing to having a voice. And I wanted to be a voice for so many. And I could feel people really behind the scenes kind of pushing for me to, kind of, go get him, Vanessa, kind of thing. So between my own healing and then that kind of collective experience, it was really something else.
I bet, no doubt. Did you run this alone or did you have people that were, supporters that were with you?
I ran it alone, but I had my Sherpa, Vinny, who's amazing. He helps me every year. He, kind of feeds me and traverses with the support vehicle and,
Mhm.
gives me beverages. And at that first year I had my friend Shar, who did a bunch of videos for me. So I had a videographer to chronicle it because it was a long, I had to train quite a bit for that. To do, 11 marathons in 11 days is quite an undertaking. Your body sort of fatigues and you have to be mindful of, elevating your legs at night and icing. And so there was a whole sort of process to manage not getting injured, which was, I'm 50 years old. So at the time, I guess, 48 years old. So just protecting my joints and things. So there was like this little mini team, but a lot of other people helped me along the way. Barry had made a lot of my running gear like dance worthy. So it was very flexible and she made it very ornate, and the veil and all of the things that were, she donated her time for that. A lot of people donated their time to help me. The people who helped me with the route. So my friend Todd helps me with the route. And then I have other crazy ultra athletes that were kind of, telling me that I could in fact do it and helping with my training program. So a lot of people donating their time to the cause.
It definitely sounds like it was a team effort, and one of the things I tell, people all the time is it takes support around you. The healing process takes support. And if trying to do it alone is just a nightmare, and I think that just symbolically showed that this was part of your healing journey. This was the direction that you chose to take that, but it took a team to make that happen.
Yeah, it really did. It was a group effort. I could not have done it alone. I just don't, there's just no way logistically, but yeah, certainly
Right.
spiritually as well. It felt so great to have people around me. And there were times where it was like really hot and I would become maybe even disoriented, and especially in the following years. I know Connecticut was really, really hot and it was far less mileage, but it seemed way harder because of the heat. And there were times where I would kind of have to like really count on people to tell me, okay, make a left here, Vanessa. And I'm like, where am I? Grandma, is that you? Like, what's happening? So sometimes it can sort of break you down.
Okay. Do you have more runs planned?
We're going to keep doing it every year. I'm now starting to joke though, like, what are the smallest states? But we'll do it as long as I can do it. And then this year actually was the first year where I had somebody do the entire run with me virtually, which was really cool. So I'm thinking about talking to that person and seeing if she wants to take over.
Okay.
Um, But yeah, I think that was really cool. So I feel like that makes it technically a movement. Now somebody else has done the entire run with me, which is really, really cool. And very, very emotional to see that people are really lockstep with you and, wanting to support and, kind of keep this movement going. So it's very exciting. This year was the first year we had that.
That's awesome. Okay. So the people out there listening that are dealing with these toxic, narcissistic relationships and, like you called it, domestic terrorism, what is your message to them? Like, what is the message that you speak then to those who are living this?
Yeah, you're not crazy. Um, these people they know what they're doing. They're pathological, they're hazardous, they're everywhere. People think that, sociopaths or cult leaders live in some faraway land and look a particular way. And that is not the case. These are poets, priests, and politicians, people that are in your neighborhood, that are rather unassuming. We saw this with Keith Raniere from the Nexium cult, who just looks like, this unassuming guy, kind of, he could be the teacher in your child's elementary school, he could be the plumber. There's no monster sort of look that they portray, particularly with the covert narcissist, kind of this super unassuming martyr victim kind of narrative. Um, but they are really, really dangerous. In the case of the covert narcissist, I personally think this is worse because, at least with the overt, you can kind of see this jerk coming a mile away. Maybe he's the guy with the Ferrari and the pop collar and the tons of cologne, and he's kind of, flashy and the rest. The covert is going to take something from you that is far more valuable, and that is your precious time. So they will actually, seemingly in my work, pull from you decades of your existence, potentially your child rearing years, where the overt is kind of in and out, fast and furious, just sort of obvious, and you might could see some red flags a little bit. The covert is a different beast. And it's also really challenging that, and with the covert, to, as we mentioned, sell this story to the public, because it's impossible for them to believe. Not Joe. Joe would never. Are you kidding? It's got to be you. You're crazy. Joe would never do that. So they know how to play that game in a really, really special way. So I think they are particularly dangerous. And so it's important for people to feel validated. My clients just want to know that they're not crazy. They just want to know that what they're seeing in terms of the gaslighting and manipulation and lack of empathy are real. And this is real. These people are all around you.
That's very well put, and the difference that you just laid out about between overt and covert narcissism is very real. It's very that covert side is so passive aggressive and so unseen. It's the abuse that's just not seen, and so you don't. It becomes hard to find the support around you because people don't see it and they don't believe you, or they don't validate it, or they doubt it. And so not only does a covert narcissist steal your time, like what you're talking about, you can be decades in and have no clue that this has happened. They steal your self-confidence, your reality. They steal your perceptions, and all of that just gets so convoluted that you end up kind of lost in a world of self-doubt, and living out of that fog. The fear, obligation, and guilt is so common with covert narcissism.
Yeah, and we see that in the cults as well. And a lot of people have a hard time connecting these dots. This is what is I'm so passionate about, is we see that in cults, whether it's in a family system or in a larger cult, where now it becomes even trickier to extricate yourself because you're outnumbered. And so that confusion for you becomes, it must be me. Everyone else loves this person. It must be me. Everyone else loves this person, is sort of this theme. And they build it that way in the family systems, which is very cultic in many cases, especially if it's with somebody who is a narcissist, a sociopath, or a psychopath, is they build out these flying monkeys and social systems that support their narratives And then if you are the black sheep or the outlier in that scenario, it becomes crazy making for you. It must not be them, it's me. And that is very kind of self fulfilling, toxic, and tragic for so many people because they can't find a way out of that thought process because the numbers alone sort of highlight that it's you because everyone else seems to be fine with this.
Yeah, you're completely outnumbered. You feel completely outnumbered. And to continue questioning it or continue doubting it and continue to be invalidated, it just keeps eating away at any confidence in that you have in your own perceptions.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the reasons why I knew I wasn't the narcissist was because I thought I was when I left the relationship and I was questioning myself so hard because I had been mirrored so seriously, like everything that I was doing, he was doing, down to music, clothing, behaviors, and I was convinced that it was me. But the only reason why I managed to get out of that headspace is I know one thing about me, which is that I'm not a liar. It was a thing for me. I just always was kind of like outspoken in terms of like, I don't know, a variety of different ways. And I was able to hang my hat on that. And it became almost like a superpower for me because I knew that I wasn't somebody who peddled untruths. It just wasn't a thing. I don't know where it came from or, why it was that way. But that's how I sort of saved myself is I just stayed very, very connected to my truth. And I tell that to a lot of my clients, which is when you're raising children and you're trying to co-parent with a narcissist, the magic you can give your children is the identifying of fact versus fiction, because the narcissistic parent will try to gaslight and confuse the children and groom them. So at an early age, you have to kind of show them what the truth looks like. Now, that doesn't have to be in a subjective experience with their toxic parent. It could be anything. Little Susie said that to you, that was untrue. That wasn't true. And that's really important for you to understand that little Susie wasn't telling you the truth there. And so they understand truth. The
Mhm.
truth is the truth. You know what I mean? This is like, this is really important. This is sort of your ticket out of there is to understand that it doesn't shift. There's no alternative facts. The truth is the truth. And that I think is the magic for so many people. And that's how I sort of found my way out. Like that was me just crawling out into the light. It was like, okay, let's look for the truth.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it. And in sitting here listening to you, I was thinking about my own situation and all the self-doubt and all the trying to figure out what's reality and what isn't, and all the gaslighting and the circular conversations. And I think the truth, if I really had to pinpoint what truth I held on to in my situation, it was that I know I'm a compassionate person. And so, like you're saying, I know I'm truthful and that lying is not a thing for me. I know I'm compassionate and selfish behaviors or self-serving behaviors are not a thing for me. They just aren't. I know that about me. And I think that was a truth for me that I was able to hold on to when he kept throwing it against me of, well, you're just out to protect you, you're just out to do, but I knew it wasn't true. And so I think you're onto something there. That one little element of truth that you can hang on to might be your saving grace and making sense and getting out from under this.
Yeah, I felt that way. And I think that's where I thought I wanted to see if I could do the run because I wanted to see if I was, you know, tough enough or something. And there was this little whisper like to step into my power. And the truth really came through. And there was no way you could fake what I was doing. It wasn't going to, it felt like almost like the most authentic thing I could ever do was to just put on sneakers because I actually really do enjoy running to this day. I still love it very much. And so it was this connectedness around that. And I think it was a symbol of being empowered too.
Mhm.
So I do tell my clients quite a bit to find something they're really, really interested in or good at and just build a mastery around that. And it will feel authentic. It will feel, and that's kind of what you'll gravitate toward. And it's the same thing with friendships now. I don't have fake friends. Those people, they took themselves away from me. I had nothing to do with it. They all sort of like went with the narcissist, and some of them for money, some of them for they kind of sort of disappeared out of my life. And then who was left remaining were like these amazing soldiers that kind of carried me through. But well, everything feels far more authentic now.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think holding on to those little bits of truth is where you'll start finding that authenticity. And when you do, you know it. You feel it, you know it, and it's such a clear difference.
Yeah.
Now you have a book that is coming out. I'd love for you to share that with with our audience here today and tell them about it.
Yeah, so I have a book coming out by Hachette. It's coming out October 29th. It is Narcissistic Abuse, a therapist's guide to identifying, escaping, and healing from toxic and manipulative people. Super proud of it. It is designed to fuse the concepts of cult abuse and narcissistic abuse. I think it might be the only or one of the only non-self-published books that does kind of try to fuse those concepts, which is really important to me because you could be in a cult of 1, 2, 5, 5 million. But all of the tactics are the same. They are all led by narcissists, sociopaths, or psychopaths. And the whole idea is this sort of master manipulation and mind control. And so people who say to me, like, I would never be in a cult, it's like, well, I don't know about that. So it's really important for me to sort of take away the victim blaming shame that so many people feel when they get out of these relationships with the cult of 1 or the cult of 5 million. It can happen to anyone. My clients run the gamut between, some of the more famous, beautiful, wealthy, and all of the rest still fall victim. We saw this in the stolen youth cult with one of the victims there was a doctor. And there's no reason why, any of us should have any shame around getting involved with somebody who is pathological because they've been doing it their whole lives. They're really good manipulators. But that's really important for me, is to sort of highlight the mind control piece.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, in the work I've done, I've met with people all the way from, from people who even have a psychotherapist background or psychology, masters in psychology, practicing for 20, 30 years. And they come to me and go, I'm in a marriage with a covert narcissist, and I have no clue how this happened. And in fact, they're quick to say, I should have seen this coming. But you don't. I mean, they are so good at what they do, and they are so good at mirroring and manipulating and flipping the perception of reality just enough with just enough truth that you just don't see it coming.
No. And I think a lot of people have a lot of shame, but I feel really passionate about this because the truth is I feel like I'm an intelligent person. And when I went to get my master's, they didn't really teach us about anything like this. They don't teach this to you in grade school.
Mm,
There was no way for me to have known. I feel like I'm a decent, empathetic person. It's not a knock at me for being a decent and empathetic person.
mm-mm.
That's ridiculous. And so I don't feel a lot of shame around this. And that's why I think I speak out about it so boldly, is because I actually don't feel that way about
It-
myself. I think I tend to be a good student, a learner, like a sponge, a curious character. And that ended up causing, a sort of a reason for me to fall for someone like this, because I believed the things that he was saying. I had no idea what was going on. It's like you don't know what you don't know what you don't know. How are you
Right.
supposed to know? So I speak out really loudly around the victim blaming piece. I just don't subscribe to that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I stand by my right to be a person who believes in the goodness of other people, who gives people the benefit of the doubt, that empathetic side of me. I will defend my right to be that person. But it does mean that we've got to be able to put boundaries around it. Now that I know what I know, that I know, that I know, I'm going to put boundaries around that to prevent myself from ever, being taken advantage of again. But I'm not going to change the fact that I want to be that empathetic and caring and compassionate person.
That is phenomenally said. And I agree with that, because what happens when you have those boundaries is they're going to come near you. They're going to come in your periphery, but your autonomy and agency, because you're not going to let them sort of do the things that they want to do to shift you, they're just going to organically disappear and slither away to some other place and find somebody else. So that's really the secret. People ask me all the time, how do I keep them away? You can't. They're going to come in, they're going to try to, but if you have, your boundaries in place, they will tire of the effort, and go find somebody who they can easily or manipulate.
Right. Right. That's like somebody trying to break into a house. They're going to find the house with the least resistance.
Yep.
They're going to find the house that doesn't have the alarm system, or that doesn't have the big dog in the backyard, or that, they're going to find that, move on to an easier target.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So Vanessa, thank you for sharing your story here. And if people want to learn more about your story, where would they go?
Sure. So the website I have is TELLA therapist.net. You can also visit tellatherapist.org, which is my nonprofit where I will connect you with a narc savvy clinician in your respective state, or on Instagram at Vanessa Reiser, LCSW.
That's awesome. And I want to put the links to that, in the show notes for this episode. And so those links will be there too for everyone who's listening. And maybe you're not able to write stuff down now, but the links are there and you can just go click on it there. So Vanessa, thank you so much for sharing your story here. Is there any word of hope that you would give to those listening, of just to kind of wrap it up and a word of encouragement to them?
Yeah, it gets better. And I think we are starting to really shine a light on this. The word of 2023 was gaslighting. So people are starting to talk about this in a way that they never were before. So the work that we're doing, all of us as kind of a tribe, is and will continue to have an impact.
Yep, I completely agree. And I think there cannot possibly be enough of us out there doing this work. So I'm thrilled to meet you. This is my first time to get to meet you. And thank you so much for sharing your story here. Just thank you for being a part of this, this advocacy to lead the way for people to learn more about narcissistic abuse.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Everyone out there listening, I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing.